let's welcome on our next presenter here. We're going to continue with more publicly traded companies for the Benzinga audience. That's what we love doing. And we have here from KemPharm, it's ticker KMPH on the NASDAQ. We have the company's CEO and chairman, Travis Mickle. There he is. Hello, welcome, sir.
Hey, Brent.
Hope you're having a good day. I'm doing very well. And I see you have a presentation backstage, and there it is on screen. I'll let you take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, and thanks everyone for taking the time to be with me today. Just kind of run through some of the presentation here. I think everybody knows that this is the fun part of the presentation. If you don't want to read all that quickly, you can always go to our website and look at the Investor Relations tab, which it's all located there as well. Just for those that aren't familiar with the organization, I like to run through at least the first 4 or 5 minutes of a presentation, just to give you a sense for what we are. I know we have a lot of followers, a lot of folks that longtime KemPharm supporters, and we're happy to have them here. And certainly heard the story many times. But for those new, what do? We really focus on discovering and developing novel treatments for CNS diseases, and we've been doing this since really 15 years of our existence. We now have 2 approved and partnered medications, Astaris and Apodaz. Astaris was just recently approved back in March and launched by our partner. And, Apodaz was a little bit further back, but also just launched late last year. And then, we use what we have, these different tools, the LAT platform I'll discuss very briefly here in a second, as well as our extensive expertise in CNS, to really create, a pipeline of high-value opportunities. And that's been our focus. And now I think we're really reaching that point in which, this could really take off. You can see here the collective management as well as senior leadership at the organization, our collective experience, both corporate and through drug development. Of course, my tenure has only been at 2 organizations, New River Pharmaceuticals and KemPharm. But of course, that spans, now multi-billion-dollar products in Vyvanse. A lot of the organization has roots in New River and Shire, and a lot of our collective experiences have come in the area of ADHD and ADHD drug development. A lot of us were involved in Vyvanse drug development, which many of you know is a multi-billion-dollar drug for the treatment of ADHD. I happen to be the lead inventor on that particular product. So our approach is actually fairly straightforward, and I think that's why there's a lot of appreciation for our technology. You can see here it's pretty simple. We take an approved drug and we do a chemical modification or a re-engineer of that drug with what we refer to as a ligand. We get a new molecule from that. It could be an NCE, composition of matter-based patent, whatever it is. It's a new molecule. And once it's administered to humans through natural processes already there, you're going to get back that ligand as well as the parent drug that was the same approved active. Now, we're going to prove things like pharmacokinetics, drug delivery, metabolism, toxicology, numerous things that you can do with a prodrug that you can't do with, say, a formulation approach. And what's nice about this, though, is you also get the ability to kind of get your cake and eat it too. Hey, look, we have an approved active we start and end with. We can go through the FDA's 505(b)(2) pathway, reference a lot of the previous findings of safety and efficacy, but we also get our composition of matter-based patents. So it really does strengthen the approach, gives you some novelty, and provides good protection for the long term. We've been pretty successful here at KemPharm in doing this. I already mentioned Apodaz. Here's just a brief kind of summary at the top of some of our product opportunities. Astaris, of course, is the product that was just approved and launched. Next milestones, we'd probably be looking at royalties and sales milestones in 2022. Beyond that, really thinking about what we can do here at KemPharm to help modify a number of, first-in-class, unmet needs, and rare CNS diseases. And you can see from our approach, we've really focused on using the prodrug that was in Astaris for stimulant use disorder or idiopathic hypersomnia, or really any CNS disease that fits that. And we're excited because we're coming up on some data by year end that should elucidate to us what exactly the right path is and what products to focus or prioritize on. And we're also, moving things up our preclinical pipeline. So it's an exciting time for us. A lot of work trying to get that all together, but certainly something to stay tuned for as far as next candidates and where those will go and what those timelines will look like. I mentioned that we have the 2 approved products. They've all been partnered. Astaris was partnered with Gurnett Point Capital, large private equity fund headquartered in Boston. One of their affiliates, wholly owned sub companies here, Corium, is actually the commercial party. It's now available, of course, for sale as the product Astaris for ADHD. We also have Apidaz that was partnered with KVK Tech. That product was launched late last year. This happens to be an opioid in an opioid world that's not very forgiving. So I think KVK's Tech has taken the right approach. A pilot launch, slow and easy wins the race here. They have long patent life, and they certainly want to do what's best for the product in the long term. So great to have these partnerships in place. Now, as we look to the future and what we can do to create value and keep all that value, of course, or as much of it as possible in the future. So those of you that are familiar with the organization, commercial launch I've already mentioned. The long-lived patents here are also very key. You're not thinking about this going away in 10, 12 years as a typical product would be. Here you have these long-lived patents that go for another 16 years post this time frame. I mentioned SDX briefly. SDX is a prodrug that's contained within Astaris, about 70% of that component, and it was classified as a Schedule 4 by the DEA and FDA. We find this to be highly advantageous. It's the only methylphenidate Schedule 4 product, and it's something that we believe we can really take advantage of and use to treat diseases that really have unmet need. The company is in a great position financially. We had a complete transformation over the last 18 months. Last year we weren't on the NASDAQ. We were OTC listed. We were, heavily in debt with very little capital. Now, what we did have was a product that was under review and a potential PDUFA date in March of this year, 21, as well as a lot of potential benefit from our financial partner in Corium/GPC. So with that, we were able to transform the company. You can see through a series of transactions, we've been able to accumulate about $132 million in cash. We have a low cash burn, and that'll change as we get through development here and add additional candidates. But at this time, things are really quite remarkably changed from a year ago. And then what's beyond this? I already mentioned the SDX and the excitement around that. KVK Tech also plans to expand their partnership with SureMed. This is part of what's known as Perspectives in Care and the launch of Apidaz. This was initially a very small pilot program, and now that's going to expand to other regions and other states. And we'll really enjoy working with them and seeing where that moves in the future. So let me turn briefly to Astaris. Many of you are aware this is ADHD is a huge market. It has a number of branded products, but also a fair number of generic products. And when we polled physicians, and this is not just polling through market research, but also just continuously with key opinion leaders and thought leaders, duration of action, abuse potential, and onset of action were probably 3 of the biggest unmet needs with methylphenidate-based products today. And that's where we had focused our attention in when we had designed and got Astaris approved. And if you can look here, you can see the Astaris product, again, 70% prodrug, 30% immediate release methylphenidate. These are formulated together to give you those benefits. So indicated for the treatment of patients 6 and up, can be administered with or without food. You don't need any sort of patient-compliant dosage form. The capsule is very small. You can actually open it up, put it in water, put it in on applesauce, and it'll work just exactly the same. And that's actually on the label. A 12-month study was conducted, and I think this was really very, very interesting and not anticipated. But a 12-month study was conducted, and we didn't see any clinically significant changes in height and weight compared to normal growth pattern. So that means, kids continued on their trajectory. They were able to maintain and grow over the 1 year period of time. And this has been one of the number one issues that parents have highlighted to Corium, really, as some of their concern. I've already mentioned the STX Schedule 4. And also, what the data shows is that we have an onset of action at 30 minutes out to 13 hours based on the LS mean score changes from placebo. These are just some of the current stimulant products out there. Well, now Stars is, of course, current, but I already gave you the update. Vyvanse, Adderall XR, Focalin XR, Concerta. You can see here in the red, I've really highlighted where I believe that Astaris outperforms these four products. As an expert in ADHD, I think that's from these labels, you can really get a sense for how this is going to differentiate in the marketplace as physicians and parents and patients have a chance to use it more. This is the language that I mentioned. It's from Section 6 of the label, looking at the actual changes from a normal sort of growth curve or the Z-score, and how it's not statistically significant or clinically significant changes from that. And I think that's remarkable feature of the product. This was also about the onset of action and longer duration. Again, those unmet needs that we had heard back resoundingly from physicians. Half hour to 13 hours, we see differences across the entire day. So the product is now launched. Corium has led that effort. Corium is interesting because this is a bunch of ex-Shire folks. When Shire was taken over by Takeda, they didn't seem to want to have that continuing business unit. So basically, the entire neuroscience business unit in charge of Vyvanse is now at Corium, and they're led by Perry Sternberg, their CEO, who was the head of that business unit. So we are very fortunate to basically have a cookie cutter sort of approach here. The launch has been slower, mainly because of the COVID outbreak in some key states early on, but also because, as everybody knows in the industry, the first 6 months, you're not going to get any payer access. They're doing everything they can to block before they give, a chance to come in and negotiate on any discounts or price and rebates. But, the initial signs in the limited number of prescriptions out there is very, very positive. No pushback on the clinical profile, repeat prescribing and refills that we can see from our database. And so we're really excited. I don't think there's any level of concern whatsoever. And really, just the standard sort of launch difficulties that everybody faces nowadays. I mentioned this already, but the license agreement itself is actually in its totality is up to roughly $600 million, of about $35 million has already been paid in regulatory milestones. We'll be looking for royalties that range from the high single digits up to the mid 20s, as well as sales-based milestones that make up the bulk of this nearly $600 million. So very exciting, entering this agreement, amending it, and getting to a point where we believe that there's a lot of value still that we can achieve with Astaris. So just turning briefly here to the STX opportunity. As I mentioned before, we are in a study right now. It was put in place under the KP879 IND, and that study should read out before the year end. That study is essentially going to tell us what direction we should go. So we're going to use the data from that and say, okay, what indication do we want to go after? Well, one of those is stimulant use disorder that we've looked at extensively, as well as idiopathic hypersomnia, and there's a few others as well. We want to make sure that we prioritize this because it's such a huge opportunity with the only C4 methylphenidate. commercial value, timing, cost, regulatory risk, development risk, clinical risk. We want to make sure we nail this next one. So that's why we're waiting for the data. We want to know exactly how it will behave, and then what best suits that product opportunity. So one of those I mentioned is stimulant use disorder. I'm not going to touch on this very much in detail. You can go back and certainly see how much I've talked about this. Surprisingly to me, it's there's a bigger issue with stimulant abuse than opioids, but fortunately, people don't die as often, and so it doesn't reach nearly the level of press. Here, STX could really show a difference. It's less abusable. It's slower acting. So day after day, you can see the benefit of treating their stimulant addiction. Where I am, kind of more excited recently is in the area of idiopathic hypersomnia. Again, there's no treatments for excessive daytime sleepiness associated with IH. And with Jazz's recent approval of the Xywav product, I'm even more excited. I can see the clinical path. We'll just see what the data says, of course, and make sure we make the right choice here. But it's a great opportunity to treat a huge unmet need in a patient population that really is desperate for better outcomes. And I think I've touched on a lot of these. Really, something that works throughout the entire day is ideal for these candidates. Financially, again, can't reiterate enough the transformation that we've had in the last 18 months or so. Certainly, getting rid of debt. We have no debt right now. We now have revenue, this last quarter positive in the nice direction. Sitting on $132 million in cash. All of that is really focused on what's next, right? What value can we create for shareholders? We have other potential external investments that we're looking at in licensing, acquisition, partnerships. I think our primary focus right now is in our internal development opportunities, right? Where are we going to deploy STX? Where are we going to move preclinical candidates forward? And then, really think about what can we bring in to fill in that pipeline, right? Give me milestones over the next few years, real clinical data that we can drive value for the organization, and ultimately make that choice to go commercial or not. Where, hey, we have products now. Let's stop sharing through a license and actually commercialize these. So looking ahead, expectations of royalties and sales milestones allows you to make that decision, allows you to think forward, and having the cash in your back pocket also provides you that opportunity. We got all the tools in the toolbox. We're really looking at every opportunity to add value wherever we can. Continued evaluation, big milestones and catalysts coming up. I mentioned 2022 for sales of Astara should really be picking up at that point. Our evaluation before the year end of what STX opportunities there can be, as well as just what other preclinical candidates. As soon as we know, we're gonna pass those along to shareholders and investors, and let you guys know right away what our thoughts are and how we're gonna plan to move that ahead. So I believe that's the conclusion of my presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Excellent, Travis. Thank you very much. A couple quick questions here. Let's see. For Astaris, any exclusivity with Corium? Are you working with any other partners?
No, Corium is exclusive. They own the full commercial rights.
Gotcha.
But cool. We do have the option. That's what's nice to develop the other products that internally, the KB1077 and 879.
Certainly. Zooming out a little bit here for a second, I just want to understand. You said payer discussions. It's not going to happen before 6 months. I mean, what is you said the typical timeline doesn't start for at least 6 months. What's the rest of the typical timeline look like after 6 months? Can you break that down for us a little bit?
Yeah, no, it's usually after the first 6 months, you're going to, hopefully you've gotten a few wins during that time period where you got some payers on board, but you're going to start to see a nice ramp as each state's Medicaid reviews these over the next 12 months since launch. You're going to get those added to the formularies, and that that's 30% of the market is state Medicaid. So as those come on board, that will gain more and more access, which will get more and more patients, in front. And as the product is performing, that's really where you're going to see the biggest bump is repeat refills and new customers.
Sure. Gotcha. Thanks for explaining that. A little simpler of a question there, but I'm not very versed in this kind of stuff, so I appreciate it. And then on the idiopathic hypersomnia, the IH, it's a rare disease. I think it said 30,000 people impacted a year. What's the total addressable market like for that indication?
Well, you have a limited population, right? You have 37,000-ish. I think estimates could double that. But what's unique there is, of course, you're going to price it higher. Of course, that's how the rare disease market goes.
Sure.
And our cost to sell would be much, much lower, right? 37,000 patients out there. You probably know every doctor that writes these scripts for these folks. So, you can imagine a small 25 to 30 person sales force. And so your delta is pretty significant. And then, of course, you want to add more to that sales bag.
Gotcha. Thanks for answering those couple of cool questions. We're going to wrap it here. Good information. There was a comment in the chat that KemPharm needs to do a lot more conferences, get the word out there. Just a little feedback that I'm passing you along there, Travis. Appreciate you joining us today. Chairman and CEO of KemPharm. It's ticker KMPH. Thanks so much for joining us, Travis.
Yeah, thanks, Brent. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day.